Hello fellow replica builders, here I am with an update on the new dash module number 3 voice display, and I'd like to give you a quick overview of the capabilities of this new unit in this video. We won't cover everything in this video because there's too much to cover, so look out for updates very shortly. First of all, as we've said, it is a 4-layer single circuit board, and let's take a look first of all at the connections on the unit. There is a 10-way JST connector, and this connector and its pinout is going to be common across all of the new modules. In other words, this will take all of the signals which are the same on all of the dash modules. We then have a 20-way connector, which will be specifically for inputs which are specific to dash module number 3. We have a 9-way industry standard RS232 comms connector, and we will have a phono connector on there for putting audio inputs in, which I haven't soldered in yet. We have a dash top indicator connector, which is here, capable of driving either high switched or low switched dash top indicators. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and perform some tests on the unit to show its functions, and to do that I've connected one of these modules onto a test panel, which allows us to exercise all of the discrete inputs and the analog input here. As you can see on the back, this test panel is connected to the 20-way connector, which is for the inputs and outputs specific to dash module number 3. The connections to the 10-way connector and the comms connector will be put in by a separate test box, which is going to be used for all modules. I haven't actually wired up dash top indicators yet, so we'll do that very shortly. So let's go ahead and take a look, put some power into the unit and see what we get. Okay, moving over to the other test bench, I have the DM3 module, which I've now soldered a phono connector onto. We have the connector that we saw before connected to the switches on the input panel. We also have the 10-way connector and the RS232 comms connector connected to this module, this test box, which I can use for testing all of the new series of dash modules. It has a number of switches on it, including the one that represents the toggle switch, 2 push buttons, and the potentiometer brightness controls, a reset button, and inputs for lights and secondary ignition power. All of these side indicators and the normal auto pursuit indicators and the dash top indicators, which I haven't fitted yet, will be either fully functional or represent the normal auto and pursuit functions only, as in previous versions of the module, or they can be completely in show mode, or they can stay on continuously when you have completed the countdown sequence. So let's start off with a fully functional mode, and then later we'll look at the normal auto pursuit only modes and the non-functional modes. So let's apply power to the unit. You can see that first of all it indicates the software version. It'll illuminate the dash top indicators and the side indicators, and as we mentioned, these indicators are now in fully functional mode. Now there are two modes that the side indicators can operate in. They can either be as they are now. Well, let's put it into the other mode to start off with, because that's easier to understand. This mode is operates such that if an input is not active, then it's not illuminated, and if the input is active, then it's illuminated. So let's just switch one switch on, for example, that one, representing the low beam lights. You can see that when they're on, it's illuminated. When it's off, it's not illuminated. The alternative mode, which is made to look more like the TV show, is this mode, where when an input is off, the indicator is on, and when the input is on, it flashes. So they're the two alternative modes. Let's stick with that mode right now, and we can see that, for example, actually the left turn and right turn indicators don't flash. What they do is they operate in the opposite sense to what they would do in the standard mode. So the standard mode when the indicator goes on and off, it comes on in that fashion, and in this other mode it'll just be reversed. Okay, so let's just show all the inputs. The ignition 1 input and the starter input are actually, when you're in functional mode, these correspond to inputs on the dash-top indicators. We'll show that in an updated version of the video when I've got the dash-top indicators connected. So we have left turn, we have right turn. This one here doesn't represent this LED because that LED is for lights, and the lights indication comes from this module here. So when we put that switch on, that's the lights. You can see it actually dims the display and it flashes that indicator. So I've used this switch in that position to be the fasten belts indicator, which corresponds to this green LED here. We have low beam, that one. We have high beam, that one. We have nose lights, or front fog lights if you like. We have the rear fog lights. We have the rear window defroster if the car is fitted with it. We have the brake warning, which is that one. And we have the low oil pressure warning, which is that one. And as we've said before, you can toggle between the modes, so if you're in the opposite mode, that will be on instead of flashing, and all the ones that are inactive will be off instead of on. There's the other mode again. So the other one we have is the check engine light, which is that one there. And so you're thinking, what's this one corresponding to? Well, this is a battery or alternator indicator. So at the moment, the alternator voltage is 0, so the car is the engine's not running. As we increase the alternator voltage, you can see that that LED will become dimmer until the engine is fully running, at which point that LED should be illuminated. So any problems with the alternator voltage will be represented by this battery light coming on. You can see that the voice modulator is actually working in quite a low sensitivity mode right now. If I speak closer to it, you can see it working better. But that's just the sensitivity setting that we have on there for right now. The potentiometers, this one corresponds to you can see that's the brightness of the LEDs there. This one corresponds to the brightness of the side indicators. And let's now have a look at the alternative modes of operation of the indicators. As we say, right now we're in fully functional mode. If I just reset the module, you can see that what happens is when the countdown sequence is completed, it will go into the fully functional mode. So let's put an LED, let's put an indicator on, for example. Let's go here into this mode so we can see it more clearly, and put the low beam lights on and the lights. So that means this is, for example, the parking lights, and we've got low beam headlights on as well. So if we reset, you can see that what happens is you get the countdown sequence to start with, then when the countdown sequence is completed, we get the functional behavior of the indicators, which is either that or flashing if we're in that display mode. Let's now just switch those off for a moment. When I press push button number 1, not push button number 2, because push button number 2 cycles the indication of the side indicators between these two modes. If I press push button number 1, it will now go into a non-functional mode, and we can see now that if I have a indicator on, for example, low beam and nose lights, it makes no difference because the side indicators now are in a non-functional all-on mode. If I reset the module, we see that we have the countdown sequence, and after the countdown sequence is complete, all of the side indicators, and in fact the dash top indicators as well, will just stay on the whole time. And it doesn't matter what I do with any of these switches, that will just stay the same. The next mode is a non-functional mode where the side indicators and the dash top indicators are in a show mode. So one more press and they will now be in a show mode, the side indicators. So let's just reset the module. When the countdown sequence is completed, it will go into a show mode. So that's why you get the countdown happening twice, because the countdown happening twice is actually part of the show mode. And after a number of seconds, which is determined by a user option, that countdown pattern will repeat. If we press once more on this button, what we have now is the side indicators are still non-functional, but the normal auto pursuit indicators are now functional, and they will respond to these. For example, the one that used to be oil pressure, this low switched input here, is now operating the normal cruise light. The one that was check engine is now operating the auto cruise light, and the one that was the brake warning is now operating the pursuit light. So again, if we reset, you get the countdown sequence followed by functional operation of these three indicators only. Let's try some different operating modes. So we've looked at normal operating mode for now. A long press on push button 2 will put us into show mode. And a long press on push button number 2 again will put us back into normal running mode. Let's power down and let's power up with switch number 1 active so that we can choose the modes. And we're now going to choose the input test mode by pressing push button number 1 to select show mode, output test, input test, and then go to that mode. And in this mode, these are separate bar gauges. So these two here represent the state of the potentiometers that control brightness. They don't control brightness in this mode, we just want to know what value they're at. So that's push button number 2. This one is the battery voltage, and this one here is the alternator voltage. So as we bring the alternator voltage up, when it comes to the same value, the battery light goes out. This one is the actual audio level input. So if I speak there, you can see it respond. I hope you see that. And then this one here, that one LED represents the state of the switch. This one represents push button number 1, push button number 2. Spare high input number 1 is actually not written in the software yet, so I just need to correct that. Spare high input number 2 and spare low input number 1. And of course, toggling with the long press on push button number 2 will cycle between input test mode and output test mode. Input test mode will just check each of the LEDs in turn and do a number of patterns. I'm not going to sit there and go through all that. I'm going to do a much better updated video later, but this one will hopefully just show you some of the capabilities of the new unit. So that is a quick overview of the new dash module number 3. Thanks very much for watching.